Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of Blood, Monsters, and Fears, a brand new podcast hosted by me, Craig Brosnan, and...
Me, Anastasia Castleberry.
Yes, Anastasia is my wonderful girlfriend. She is a monster and horror movie veteran, and I know basically nothing, but I've always been interested in the genre, so I figured it'd be fun to kind of force myself to go through these, and since she's kind of an expert and I'm definitely a novice and a virgin to the whole genre, figured it'd be a good idea if she curated the movies, kind of gave the best rundowns, told us a lot about them, and you guys as an audience could learn along with me with someone who knows a lot about this shit, because I don't know basically anything.
So as a quote-unquote veteran, definitely not a word I would necessarily use for myself.
Oh, come on, you know a lot.
It's just different because I grew up on this, like, this was the lifeblood of my family. This is where half of my personality comes from as a person. Particularly movies like the one we're going to talk about today.
Yes, an old-ass movie.
Definitely the best description for something this old.
Well, I mean, seriously, it's what, 95 years old?
Yeah.
As of when we're recording this, 1925. That's insane to think about that movies are even that old to begin with. But I really enjoyed it. The first movie we decided to go with was Phantom of the Opera from 1925.
We saw it on a wonderful, fun, free app called Tubi, though I would never recommend you watch this cut of the movie.
Tell us why.
Half of the movie isn't there. Okay, maybe not half, but a good portion of the movie isn't there. The quality of the film is some of the worst I've ever seen for something that is so well known, that has been restored so many times that you can spend $5 at your local video store or just at Walmart to get something that looks better than this version of the movie did. But for free, it was pretty good. There are also a million and one versions of it on YouTube that are also free that look worlds better than this.
Yeah, this is a public domain movie, so you could pretty much find it anywhere. I think we checked, and you could literally go on Wikipedia and watch like 3 different versions on the Wikipedia page, which is fucking wild. So, but the version we watched, yeah, you told me, we didn't really know until retrospect. We just kind of went with what we saw with it on streaming services, because we figure if we're going to want you guys to watch movies with us, we're probably going to watch it on whatever is most accessible. That way most people can watch along with us whenever we pick a movie, and tell you guys ahead of time if you want to write in or make commentations on it as well. And Tubi, I believe, was the only streaming service it was on, right? Like, it's not on the Hulus or the Netflixes or anything, but, I mean, if it's on YouTube, too, we didn't even really think to look there. And then Wikipedia, that's just not a happy way to watch any movie because their video player's garbage. So
it's true. But, you know, looking in retrospect at what's on YouTube right now, there's one in particular that if you just type in Phantom of the Opera 1925 Blu-ray, it's perfect. It looks exactly the way it's intended to look. The score that accompanies it is right in all the right moments. The one on Tubi was so misplaced. It was beautiful, but it did not fit the movie we watched.
yeah, like the scenes that were supposed to be terrifying were funny, and you could tell that wasn't supposed to be that way. It sounded like comical, like chase music in an old cartoon when there was like the scary face reveal that was supposed to be like probably the first jump scare ever, technically, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, which
I feel like
really
that
fun
has to
think
be
about.
up there, at least the first few notable ones, if anything.
It is also just something to note that there are so many different versions, so many different cuts of this movie that exist, just because it's been in the public domain since the 50s, because this is a Universal Pictures movie, and they decided not to renew the ownership of this in 1958, I think. So ever since then, it's belonged to the people, and because of that, it's been recut, republished, different scores put on, different commentaries, different colorizations of parts that maybe shouldn't have been colorized.
Yeah, the Red Death was purple. So
Yeah, so
at least in the version we watched.
Yeah,
Which
definitely
is the
keep that
version,
in
like we said, the version not to watch. So
absolutely keep
just
that
go to
in mind.
YouTube. Whatever comes up first is probably the best one. And you'll look through the comments I did, and it's a lot of people saying, like, this isn't what I grew up with. It's because no one seemed to have grown up with the correct version.
It's so fair.
So, which is really bizarre, but I guess when you have a million different versions of a movie, it's just so crazy, because that's the kind of shit that never happens now.
Well, I think a big part of that is because with something that's this old, almost 100 years old, it's a miracle that we even still have it at all, that it survived as long as it did. But, we still have something that, when it's in the right format, when it's cut the right way, is something that is really magical to watch, that in the right circumstance is still really scary, especially if you don't know what's going to happen, especially if you're a really young person. The first time you see this would scare the shit out of you, I think.
I don't know. I feel like I disagree, but maybe it's just because it's hard for me to put myself in that place. Like, when I can watch these kind of movies and put myself in the headset of, this is old, so it has different standards, so I can enjoy it with those standards set in mind. But certain things like that, like usually, especially things like horror and humor, are the things that just don't age well. Like, stuff that was scary to people in the 20s is definitely not going to scare us now, when we have way scarier stuff that actually happens now, opposed to just an ugly dude playing the piano.
I get where you're coming from, but I was also, like, 6 years old.
See, and I think that could make a difference, too. Like, if you're a young kid and you see that guy, I could see that being kind of weird, too. Especially if you watch the right version. Because I did check the version on YouTube after we watched the Tubi one. I didn't watch the whole thing. But if you go to the scene with the scary face reveal, there actually is, like, a sharp piano kind of, like, key that hits right when his face shows. And I could see that actually being kind of scary, for back then at least. But regardless, spoiler alert, we both like the movie a lot, and it's definitely worth watching. But since this is the first episode of a new podcast, we couldn't have you guys watch along beforehand because we didn't have any way of communicating to watch it beforehand. So
hopefully you've already seen it. If not, it's extremely accessible.
Yeah, and if you are listening to this and you're like, oh no, I don't want this movie spoiled for me, I promise you don't care. It's not that story heavy. It's more of a interesting timepiece than it is I don't want to say it's not historical, because it definitely is. I'm trying to think of the right word, but I feel like it's the kind of thing where if you know the plot, it's kind of like beat by beat. Like, you're not going to be disappointed from knowing what happens. Like, you can still watch it knowing what's going to happen and have a good time.
I agree. I definitely agree.
Because, I mean, I feel like Phantom of the Opera is just one of those things everyone just kind of knows of, as is.
That's
so,
true.
in some form or another, where there's the more recent ones, I feel like there's been, at least 3 or 4 different remakes of it anyway.
Absolutely.
So,
definitely the second most wide known is probably this, next to the Andrew Lloyd Webber one, the musical from 2004. That shot it back right into the public eye in a way that it wasn't, because obviously there is the Broadway play that it's based off of, but not everyone has access to that kind of thing. But I mean, thinking about how the original form of this movie is actually technically a lost film, we're lucky to have it at all.
Well, yeah,
I feel really lucky
because I see you did put in our fancy show notes here. You said that the original version of the film only exists on a 16mm home reel. So is that version even not the original, or is there just no way to confirm it, or what?
I think what it is, because with the resources that I had personally to be able to research more in depth on this, is that 16mm home reel probably, if I had to guess, is either in some kind of like a museum for film archives, or probably a private collector's collection. And a lot of the time when it exists only in that way, the public never sees it. So it's probably been almost 100 years since the last time this was seen in the original form that it was cut in for the theater.
It's a shame if that is the case. I don't know. I mean, I'm all for preservation, of course. I mean, for those of you that are listening and don't know me personally, I'm very big into game collecting, and I care a lot about the preservation of that and of all medias, really. And I just can't stand people that are like, I have this one-of-a-kind thing that no one knows about, and then they choose not to share it or preserve it in some way. They just keep it to themselves because they think it makes it more valuable. I always find that kind of dirty in a way. Well, I don't know. I feel like that kind of stuff, it should always be shared, I think, especially if it's historically important. And even if it's not, media is media. Everything matters to somebody. So
it's true, especially when you think about the star of this movie, Lon Chaney. I would say 90% of the movies he was ever in don't even exist anymore.
I saw that, yeah. If you go to the main person in this movie, if you go to his Wikipedia page, I'd say every 8 out of 10 movies you look at is a lost film.
And I know, and it's
ridiculous.
It's so sad to think about.
No. Yeah, I remember, I saw a statistic, so I don't want to be quoted on this, but I think they say it's like 98% of movies before like 1950 30 or 40 are lost. Like, it's that big of a crazy number. So it's interesting that of all the things that we at least have in some form, maybe if it's not the original Phantom of the Opera, it's a pretty important one that got pieced back together for us. So it's cool that we can still watch it today.
I agree.
Anyway, maybe we could talk about the plot.
So this movie starts out, it doesn't really say when it's supposed to be taking place. If I had to guess, it's not going to be that far behind from 1925.
Yeah, I feel like it's implied around that time, like looking at the style of everything and the way everyone's dressed and acting, it seems like it's pretty modern for when it was supposed to be taking place.
Definitely. I mean, the story was written in 1909, and that wasn't that far behind.
Yeah, they didn't leap that far ahead technologically between them.
No,
so
unfortunately not. So it starts out in Paris, for those of you who don't know, and it shows us the Paris Opera House, which doesn't exist. There is a version of it that's real, but not something that's actually called that. So just no misnomers here. We are not... Yeah. So the Paris Opera House has the Phantom living in the tunnels beneath the building, and he's mostly just known as a superstition to the people who work there, perform there, that are patrons there. And, you know, you see people from the lower class and the high society. It definitely shows us all castes, especially at that time, which was interesting for film then. The people that they show that are the most fearful, fairly early on in the movie, of him are the managers of the opera house. They try not to talk about him. They are always leaving box number 5 in the opera house empty for him, just sort of like as a sign of respect, but also they don't want to die because his box was taken up by someone that isn't him. So also during this movie, we do see that the managers do sign over their duties to new people to take over for them. And they immediately, once the papers are signed, saying that they are no longer the ones that are in charge of this building, that you should be afraid of the cloaked dude you might see just every once in a while. If you don't leave the box open for him, you'll probably die.
They're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
They look at each other and they're just like, what?
I can't imagine if somebody told me that.
So, I mean, scummy move, I guess, to just leave it to the poor buyers, but you can't probably blame them. They've probably been wanting out of that for a while. But I don't think there's any known troubles, really, with the Phantom up to this point.
Just that he's a weird creeper and that they are afraid of him.
Yeah, but they're not like he's gonna fucking murder you.
No, but they're afraid of him, and nobody really knows why, because they also don't know if he's alive or not. That's why they call him the Phantom. It's like, he could be a guy. He could be a ghost. Either way, they're not trying to test their luck.
That's fair.
So the female lead of this film is a character named Christine Day, and she has very suddenly moved up from being a member of the chorus to being the understudy to the prima donna of the opera.
And that's the Carlita?
Carlota.
Carlota. That's a made-up name.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. We see that she has very recently turned down the advances of a very handsome, mustached nobleman named Raoul. Please note that his name is spelt wrong in those title cards. There is an O where it doesn't belong. Anyhow, she turns him down, saying that her career is moving too quickly for her to slow down, that is what's important to her, and it has to come first, which is definitely very, like, modern woman of her.
Yeah, I feel like that's a little ahead of the times in a way for the 1920s for her to be like, I'm putting my job before my man.
Absolutely. I mean, any other woman of that time would be jumping at the chance to marry someone, and she's like, no.
Mm-hmm. Especially, dude, rich as fuck.
I know.
Raoul got money.
He's fancy. His outfit's really, really nice.
He does look bougie as hell.
He looks like he has got it together. We're proud of him. She is super firm in her belief that she is going to be all that and a bag of chips in the opera because of her music teacher, who she hasn't actually ever seen or met.
Sounds ghostly, almost phantom-like.
Well, he's promising her that she's going to be the star, that with his teaching and with her being completely devoted to him, that she will get everything she wants and more. It doesn't take that long for her to realize that he is, in fact, the Phantom of the Opera. He sort of entices her to come down into his tunnels with him. I guess kidnapped might be a better word.
Yeah, I feel like it's more of a kidnapping than a lure. Because at first it seems voluntary, and then as soon as she sees him, she's like, maybe not. And then he's like, yeah, you're coming with me.
I mean, yeah, because she seems like she's sort of out of it from the second she walks through the mirror and down the steps, and she's not looking at him.
Yeah, and then you see the weird, funky looking mask, right?
Yes, and he's like so reluctant in that moment to put his hand on her shoulder, and she looks like she thinks she's tripping.
Yeah, she wasn't into it.
She has no idea what's going on. She's like, why am I down here? Like, this isn't happening.
Not as hunky as Raoul.
No. That mask, absolutely not. Where's his mustache? That's the real question.
True, we do love good mustache.
I guess I would say that she's sort of afraid of him from the get-go. Just from seeing his mask. Just from him being like,
well, yeah, because it's off-putting from the beginning, and it's not like a normal-looking mask. Like, even the mask looks kind of deformed, too. Like, maybe it's just the weird restoration we saw. I don't know, but it looked ugly. I was gonna say it looked weird to begin with, so
super ugly.
He was ugly inside and out. Go on.
So she kind of definitely afraid of him. Definitely, probably going through her mind right now is that it's a very surreal experience, and she catches him playing the organ that is in fact not a piano, that is an organ. It
doesn't look like an organ.
It's so creepy.
Definitely looks like a piano.
It's so creepy. It's an organ.
Okay.
And she is only asked by him once not to take off his mask, not to try to take off his mask. But she just can't shake it. She doesn't know what he looks like under there. Like, what if he's fine?
What if he got a mustache?
God, he doesn't. She rips it off his face, and he
looks like he smells. Like, he looks like he's, like... Imagine what a wet fart would visibly look like. That is what the Phantom looks like.
His teeth are jacked. He has no nose.
His eyes are, like, sunken in 4 inches to his face.
He's so scary. I remember seeing this for the first time when I was, like, 6 years old, and I was so freaked out by him. I couldn't go to sleep that night because it was just like, people shouldn't look like that. No one should ever look the way. And
this was a fantastic scene. This is, I think, the best scene in the whole movie.
And I think that's everything about it's so really
cool. Yeah, like I think you were telling me, didn't you say the first time that the lady who plays Christine saw Lon Chaney with the Phantom makeup, that was her actual first time seeing it, right? So the reaction was fairly genuine.
I'm going to assume that it's the truth. And even then, even if it wasn't the first time, I can't imagine ever seeing that in person and not being absolutely horrified and shocked that he made that happen. Because a little interjected fun fact is he did that all on his own. They gave him complete freedom to make the horrible, disgusting face of the Phantom look exactly the way he wanted. And he did. He went above and beyond.
Yeah, I thought it looked fantastic.
At that time, they said that, mind you, his face was kept a secret that whole time. There were no publicity shots of him. Nothing. Not with the mask. Only, like, the original movie cover. So when people saw that for the theater in the first time, they said that people were screaming, crying, and fainting in their seats at the sight of him. Because you have to think about the time. It's 1925. Yeah. People had never really seen something like this before, and I can't imagine that would have left me shaking in my boots.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. Is this the first like full feature length horror film or no?
I think it's definitely up there.
Because I know there's like those weird ones that are like 5 minutes long, like those like 2 or 3 minute movies, quote unquote, from back then. Like, I know standards were different back then, but like, even for back then, I feel like an hour and 40 minutes is pretty long for a movie.
Yeah, that's a really...
Like, I don't know, that's long for me now. I like my movies an hour and a half. Otherwise, I start to get into nappy time.
No, I agree.
Mold.
I don't know if I would say that it's the first feature length, but it's definitely... I would say it's
one
probably...
of.
Yeah, definitely one of the first feature length. And probably the most widely known, especially of its kind, with such a practical effect. Yeah. With something so... creepy.
Yeah, it's good. It's definitely deserves its iconic status. I really enjoyed that whole part. It was really good. The whole like the look on her face of like she kind of looks like playful and like happy. She's going to pull off his mask. Like she's like, "Ooh, what does he look like?" And then she sees him. She's like, "Ah."
Yeah, I wouldn't. All the mystery and anything that
For
she
that to
could
be
have
the
been.
payoff, yeah, I'd probably
Yeah.
cry too.
Yeah, like
No mustache,
no mustache.
no Raul money.
I know that like any.
Then again, how do you afford that organ? He might have Raul money somewhere.
I know. I mean, hey, you see his bed chambers.
That's actually
They're super fancy.
That's actually the biggest mystery of it all is how do you get all that shit down there?
I don't know.
He has to like take a boat through the river underground.
I know he puts her on a horse. Like, where'd you get that horse, dude?
I know.
It was a nice horse.
I have more questions than answers finishing this movie.
By far, by far. So I don't know if I want to say that she escapes. She kind of makes a little bit of a dealio with him, and she's like, yeah, sure, I'll be with you if you let me leave.
Oh yeah, what was it for? I'm trying to remember exactly.
That she is never going to see Raul again.
Yes. Like basically she has to like kind of it's part of the deal. She has to perform at the opera forever.
Well, he wanted. I don't know if it's necessarily forever. It's just that he wants her
to be his, basically.
Yes, that it has to be known that he's the one who got her there. Yes, she's talented, and yes, she has a beautiful singing voice, but without him, she couldn't do any of these things. So she gets back up onto, she gets topside. She's not stuck in those creepy catacombs with him anymore. And she goes right back to Raul, and she's like, hey, BB, still got that cash waiting for me? I guess I would do something similar. I can get where she's coming from. What? If I saw that horrifying face, I can't say it's out of the realm of human reaction to something so scary.
Fair.
And, she basically is telling him that she's ready, that, basically, fuck the opera. I want to be with you. Let's leave now. Let's run away.
Yeah, this all takes place at a ball, which is to be mentioned as well.
It's true.
Yeah, it's at the, I don't remember the name of it had
just
like a fancy, was that what it was?
Yeah.
But, the Phantom is there too, and, he makes like a fancy entrance coming into the ball when they're all dancing, then he kind of follows them out as they go onto the rooftop to talk, and then that's where that whole conversation happens.
Yeah, and mind you, when he makes his grand entrance into this masked ball, he looks absolutely amazing. They used Technicolor in its most early form just to color his outfit, and he's wearing a mask of a skull, and he's supposed to be the Mask of the Red Death, like the story by Edgar Allan Poe, and he looks fantastic.
It does look cool.
And he's so theatrical, and you see really just he's so confident when you can't see what he really looks like, and since you can't really see what anyone else looks like, it's like he almost feels like he's free to kind of be rude and be flamboyant. And
yeah, like he's pushing himself through the crowds and stuff.
Yes, he's not hiding, he's not lurking behind in the shadows, and he's not afraid to be himself. And he follows them out, and he's hearing this, and you almost feel bad for him, I think, for one moment, when he's sitting up on top of what's supposed to be the opera house, when Christine and Raul are talking, and she's telling him that she wants to be with him, that, she was foolish to think that all these other things were going to happen, and I really did, for a moment, feel guilty, almost, for, watching this happen.
I didn't. I really... Maybe I'm in the minority, but I have no sympathy really for the Phantom. I know that might sound bad, but he's I understand people are maybe even not if people are mean to him or not. We don't really get the backgrounds. We don't know the context. All we really see is him doing terrible shit.
I just can't help but feel bad for the ugly guy.
Oh my god. Yeah.
And this. What is it? This conversation that he witnesses kind of sets him over the edge, because he's already very obviously disturbed.
Yeah.
And doesn't react in a normal way to anything. And so he's running off, and he's pissed, and he feels like he's been betrayed. He feels like he deserves everything that he wants. And somehow, mind you, please really don't watch the Tubi version, because you don't see what's about to happen is at some point he murders Raoul's brother Philippe that you see earlier on in the movie, also another very handsome, rich, mustachioed man, and he murders him. And he does it very like publicly because this ball is still kind of happening, and a lot of the patrons are there, and the people who work there see this horrible, horrible thing happen, and they're like, "Wow, he's not just an apparition. Like this is a person who's being a shady piece of shit." And so they're getting pissed, and this is really stirring a lot of anger in these people that are around them all the time, and then they didn't want to believe that he was real, but knowing now that he's like flesh and blood definitely makes them want kind of a revenge, I think. And once he becomes more human to them and he's not just some story, they become really angry, which I totally get.
And at the same time, he kidnaps Christine again, right?
Yes, and he's got her, and she's
back to the lair, right?
Yes.
Kind of in the same creepy sex dungeon, weird organ place.
It's so creepy. And she's freaking out. She's, I don't know, all of these really kind of sad, scary emotions. And Raoul's like, "I'm gonna come get my bitch, you really thought." And so he's coming in, and he's trying to come and get her. Meanwhile, there's been this really creepy looking dude the whole time, just kind of lurking. And he has crazy eyes, if I ever saw him.
Yes, he has crazy eyes.
He's the worst crazy eyes.
I would not go on a date with that man.
No.
He would like murder first date.
And he's just been lurking this whole time, and all these other people this whole time have been speculating as well on the side that that's the Phantom.
Yeah,
they
and
think...
because he has the hat, the cape, the kind of thing, like, if he was just like a little uglier.
I would believe it.
That's
you wouldn't
fair.
be able to tell me that wasn't him.
Mm-hmm.
And then you find out that he's actually a detective who's been... I don't know if it really ever specifies why he's there.
True. It also, another reason not to watch the Tubi version, never tells you who the fuck this guy is.
No.
Not by name, not that he's a detective, not why he's helping. You just started to see him hanging out with Raoul, and you're like, I guess they're homies now.
Yeah, they go through the mirror together. They're walking through the tunnels. They're just broing it out. You know, there's two bros chilling in the tunnels, not 5 feet apart, but you know, whatever.
True.
So they're not walking around down there together for very long before they fall into a trap that Eric has set. I'm assuming it's probably to keep people away from him if they ever did. Somehow, if they had somehow gotten to lurk down there to fall into what is his home.
Quick interjection. I don't think we ever mentioned that his name was Eric.
Oh, yes, I apologize. So the Phantom's name is Eric.
Yes. I think the only reason we know that is because, like, does he sign a letter with his own name?
No. So the creepy... He doesn't do that till... Well, I guess that's probably already happened here. I know the creepy hat-wearing detective is talking to one of the managers at one point, and it's, again, do not watch the Tubi version because this is not cut into the right place.
Yes, the only reason I even know most of this stuff is because Anna told me afterwards a lot of the stuff, because I was asking questions while we were watching it, and she's like, maybe this isn't the version we should have watched.
And I didn't, when you're looking for something that you're low-key not trying to pay for, you kind of take what you can get, but it's...
You live and you learn.
It's true.
It's episode 1. Give us a break.
It won't happen next time. It won't. So, okay. Eric is the Phantom. Mind you, at some point, you see the detective talking to one of the managers of the opera house, and he's talking about how he's found out who the Phantom is. Actually, no, it's probably because the Phantom has been sending really threatening letters to the current prima donna of the opera, Carlotta, as we previously mentioned. So he's probably like a detective that's been sent to investigate and be like, okay, who's this Phantom dude? This is just getting out of hand.
Oh yes, we missed an iconic scene. I just realized. We didn't mention. Yes, those letters with Carlotta. They told her not. Yes.
I'm so sorry.
We completely missed that. So rewind about an hour into this podcast.
Yeah, that's fair.
And we can pretend that this was interjected. But they're in the opera house, and Eric, the Phantom, is sending off letters telling Carlotta not to perform there or else.
And if she does, she's going to die.
Yeah, and then she does perform anyway, and the lights start flickering, and it gets all spooky and stuff, and then all of a sudden the chandelier in there falls, and everyone starts freaking out.
It falls right into the middle of the crowd, which, again, is absolutely an iconic scene. I cannot believe we skipped over this.
I know. So oops. But no, yeah, that was kind of the first thing that the Phantom did that was like not cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Basically. But he was mostly doing that because he wanted to get Carlota out and Christine in to be the main person.
It's true.
So yes. So sorry for having to backpedal there, but we can go. We could keep going now, but we could not mention that. That was too important.
Yeah, I feel like at any point there, he's like, it's either my bitch or no bitch.
Mm-hmm.
And he's willing to go to any length to make that happen. Anyway, so we have the weird, creepy, crazy-eyed detective and our mustached boyfriend, Raul. And Raul and him are walking through these tunnels, and it doesn't take very long before they fall into a trap that's been set by Eric down in those tunnels, very likely to keep anyone that might happen to wander down there away from him. And at this point, Eric knows that they've fallen into the trap.
Mm-hmm.
How? I don't know.
Yeah, he's just like, aha, I got him, I guess.
I guess it's like he's waiting for them.
Yeah, there's no indicators. He just walks over there, he's like, ha.
I got him.
Got he.
And he takes this wonderful opportunity to give our girl, Christine, this fresh ultimatum. Your boo or me. I mean, pretty much. Anyway.
Mm-hmm. Essentially.
So during this time, Eric is giving Christine the ultimatum of basically she can be with him and the two men are not going to die. But if she wants to be free of him, she's, basically sentencing them to death. They find their way out on their own. I don't know how, man. I don't know. It's very tense. It's supposed to be that it's like really hot. I don't know how he made it really hot.
Yeah, there's nothing that says that. They're just like, oh, it's boiling in here, and they start taking off their clothes, not complaining. Raul's a hunk. But it doesn't make any sense because they don't clarify anything or show anything. Like maybe there's a furnace under there, which soon enough we'll explain why that can't be because they escaped through the bottom. But they really don't explain how it gets hot in there. They're just like, it's hot. And Eric is like, haha, I'm making it warm in there.
It was just that's a very bizarre sequence.
Yes, another thing that I don't think that would have helped. I think that was just, I think they just had to come up with something, and they were like, yeah, it's warm, and they left it there.
It's a little too hot and spicy in there.
McChickens. This is
so
not sponsored by McDonald's. Go on.
No, it is not.
But if you're out there, Ronald.
Not against the sponsorship. I love McFlurries. Anytime I have the option, I'm probably going to pick it with, the Nabisco Oreos in it. Anyway, so the two dudes, Christine's kind of trying to take her time, trying to buy them some time so they don't sweat to death. I don't know. And they find their way out. Meanwhile, the people who saw that Philippe is dead and they're connecting it to the chandelier having fallen and Carlota being horribly threatened or whatever, they are just running, manning all the way through these tunnels, one right after the other. It's actually kind of a funny scene, in my opinion, just because of the way it looks. They're led by a cat. There's a brief moment where there's a beautiful little cat just trailing right in front of all of them.
She was cute.
And he was very cute. And it's during this time that essentially they get away because this mob is like, this bitch, we on our way. You don't get to take our man out, So Eric sees these masses running through that weird lake that's down, like his moat, I guess. I don't know what it's supposed to be. He sees them running through the water and he's like, shit, dude, I just want to be with my woman. Like, why does it have to cost so much? So he kidnaps her again. I think this makes 3 times?
Yeah.
Yeah, the 3rd time. This
is like a Mario and Peach situation.
Absolutely.
Like, I would have just given up by now. Be like, sorry, you're his.
So he takes her again, and you see him come out of some back door from underneath, whatever, and there's a carriage out front of the gate, and he just straight up yeets this man off.
Oh my god, it is the funniest thing I've ever seen.
It was great.
Yes, he just literally like yoinks him like 10 feet
by his face. He pushes him by his face out of the stagecoach seat and is like, bye bitch, I need your ride.
Yes, like you think the face reveal is the most iconic scene from this movie, the most iconic scene of the 20s, yet the century.
Yeah, I would say. I mean,
a man getting yoinked from the carriage.
I would argue this is where GTA began.
This is where film began.
Truly. It was all leading up to this moment that he straight up yeets the man by his face.
Yeah, we could have never made another movie because it's never going to get better than that.
I mean, I just want that on a loop. I would love a gif of that.
That's not true. The only thing better, actually, is when King Kong shoves a tree down Godzilla's throat. But we're not going to be talking about that for a long time.
Oh my god.
Because that's very much on the borderline of, like, not for this podcast, but I'm going to force it in somehow.
That's fair. He will force that, ladies and gentlemen.
They're monster movies.
Whatever else,
They're monsters.
They're kaijus, yeah. So he eats our wonderful stagecoach, and he is riding and riding. It's full, like, Red Dead Redemption. He's with the horse, all kinds of bouncing around. He looks absolutely just fucking crazy. And they ride up, and he's approaching the River Seine, the big famous river that runs through Paris. And it's right here that he kind of realizes, right before he hits, like, the riverbank, like, this is it. There's no turning back. I'm never gonna get the puss, It's
he
over.
knows he's lost, yeah.
He's like, the jig is up.
All the mob is chasing him.
And they're catching up, so he, again, just absolutely yeets her out of the carriage and stops his ride and runs up to the riverbank. And there's no title cards in either version, and there's obviously no audio, so he's saying something, and he looks absolutely crazed. Like, he looks fucking insane.
Yeah, he, like, holds up his hand like he's holding something.
And he's talking.
And, yeah, he looks like he's talking, and the whole crowd kind of stops. And they just kind of look at him, and then he opens up his hand and starts laughing, like, just kidding, I don't have whatever you were afraid of. And then they push him into the river.
Yeah, they kind of, like, tear into him, they push him in, they throw him in.
Yeah.
And that's it. He...
Yeah, it says Finn.
Yeah, it says Fini.
Yeah.
And that's kind of over. I mean, Raoul has caught up to Christine by then, and he's, like, holding on to her and telling her, like, Bibi, everything's gonna be okay. No worries. Your man's is here.
Not in the Tubi version.
You're right.
In the Tubi version, it doesn't show them reunite.
You're right. No, it doesn't. She could have very well, like, been stampeded by this mob. The bitch is
dead.
I mean, Raoul is sweating through his 7 shirts.
God, he's so hot.
So...
What?
But if you see any other version than the Tubi version, you'll see it's kind of like a very little epilogue, and you see Raoul and Christine on their honeymoon, and it's like they've just completely moved past that, and just basically deuces to the Phantom.
Is that ending of them, like, reunited? Is that supposed to be like a time skip?
Yes, that's why it says like a honeymoon of lovers or something.
Oh, okay. There's like a title card for that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's in the Tubi version, there's a lot of not title cards. And then in the YouTube version we mentioned in the beginning, there was completely different title cards that I saw too. Yeah. It's a mess. Bit, yeah. I don't know if there's any definitive way to watch this.
No, I wouldn't say.
And the version we watched as well is worth mentioning. There's like a 2-minute opening of a dude with a lantern talking with no title cards. So we have no idea what the hell he's saying anyway.
So... that's the thing, is I can't say which one is going to be the ideal way to watch it. There are obviously going to be, like, Criterion versions of this. There's going to be different Blu-ray versions. There are even some that show you, like, side-by-side of 2 different reels that were taken at the same time for you to see both. But, it's just, I guess, whatever you have access to, just not Tubi.
Yeah, I don't think you could go wrong with any of them. I mean, I guess maybe the Tubi one, but for the most part, if you have any questions or you're confused about anything, for the most part, I feel like a lot of it could kind of be implied anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't... I feel like it's the kind of movie that doesn't need a lot of, like, intense, deep thought to understand what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, I feel like if you pay attention enough, you'll kind of get the gist of what's going on.
Plus, I think it's just kind of easy for things to get lost in a silent film.
Absolutely.
And I feel like a lot of it has to be interpreted anyway, so...
It's just a very different way to experience a visual story.
Yeah, I think that's another good reason we started off with this for our first review, is because most people, I think, aren't going to want to watch a silent film. I think you have to be in a very specific mindset for that. You have to be in a specific mood. It's definitely not for everybody. It's not my favorite thing. I enjoyed it for what it is, but I'm not going to want to watch another silent film like tomorrow.
I
So.
mean, yeah, they don't bother me so much.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with my mom watching silent movies pretty much every day, all day
Yeah.
through most of my childhood, so they don't bother me. I'm very used to them. I guess it's just either you want a very much complete story or you don't. Or I guess you just want. It's a very different way to experience human emotion, I think. And
Yeah, I think I can see one of the appeals for silent movies being that it's more up to interpretation too.
absolutely.
So.
You had to rely so heavily on, the way you look versus the way you sound.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are some people that can portray a million different emotions just because of the way their voice sounds. If it like trembles when they're saying something, but then when you don't have that, which you realize when you think about old film, it really is a luxury.
Mm-hmm.
Everything has to be so reliant on the way your eyes look, the way your eyebrows move, you know, how you portray emotion. And I think that's why this movie is so important and why they call Lon Chaney one of the most prolific horror actors of his time, the man of a thousand faces,
Mm-hmm.
because he is this person. Like, if you don't know that, honestly, that's how I see it, is if you don't know that the Phantom's not a real guy, I don't think I would know, because he just
Mm-hmm.
is him. He doesn't have to say anything.
Yeah.
It completely embodies everything that this character is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed that part so much. I think it's so important.
So that is the gist of the plot for The Phantom of the Opera 1925. Why don't we go over? I saw you research some fun facts.
Uh,
Give us some fun facts, Anna.
Anyone who happens to know me in real life knows that I am a fun fact. That's half
You're
of what I
chock
have
full
to
of
say. Oh God, that's all I have to say is,
Yeah.
did you know?
So you'll be getting a lot of those in future episodes for everything we watch.
I really hope you enjoy them. This is probably my favorite part of learning about any movie, is knowing what's going on behind the scenes
Mm-hmm.
and knowing all the weird things that just happen to be accompanying them. So, fun fact that if you're really not into, and not even necessarily just horror movies, but if you're not into movies in the way that like a film buff is going to be into them, you're not really going to get it, or you're not going to know. 3 versions of this movie were released in the same year. So this is
So if you're wondering why this is such a mess and that there's no original version,
there's 3 versions. So the first one was a limited release that was made for test audiences and tanked, and was supposed to be so bad that people said that they would never see this again if they did re-release it, that they thought it was so terrible. They were so embarrassed. Universal was like, oh my God, they spent a lot more money and they reshot a whole bunch of scenes from this movie and completely recut it. The second version was received better, but it's still kind of tanked. They were just not, they were missing the mark with whatever they did with the first two cuts of this movie. So those are, again, lost to time. We will never see them. And then they did the wonderful, fresh, final third edit that was a smash hit, made some fat cash.
Do you have the actual box office numbers on you or no?
No, I don't. But like we mentioned earlier, just briefly, most modern versions of this movie include a sequence at the very beginning that's known as the Lantern Man footage. It's weird. It feels really long for what it is. There are no title cards in any version of this that exists. They say that it was in the original 1925, like the big hit one, but it didn't really start showing up, I guess, where people noticed it until the 30s when they started getting those home reels. You can almost see him talking, but it's so dark and so out of focus, and it almost kind of feels out of place. And you do see the Phantom kind of like creep by, but nobody knows where it's from. Nobody knows what he's saying, what he's supposed to be saying. I know that in some of the redone talking versions,
They've made up audio, right?
Absolutely, they've made up audio.
I mean, my assumption would be, because The Phantom of the Opera was originally a play, right?
No, it's based off a book.
Okay. Was there a play before a movie or no?
No.
Okay. Never mind. So I was going to say, maybe it's supposed to be like him presenting it like it's a play.
Right.
Or like, this is the story of the ugly, smelly man. I don't know.
But I'm going to assume, that's what I would assume.
I mean, probably, right? But it's just so crazy that there's no version or no way of really knowing what he said.
I know.
It's a shame there's not even a good enough restoration where, like, even, like, maybe, like, someone that's, like, ridiculously good at mouth reading could see clearly enough or something, but...
It looks so bad. It looks...
Yeah, he's just way too far back there and the lighting is off and everything.
And again, there are alternate cuts of this scene again, where there's, like, a close-up of him and stuff, but you still have no idea what he's saying, because the film quality is so poor. And it's really sad. Just the way it is, I guess, when something is this old. Something else to note, too, is that this novel really wasn't that well known or successful. Somebody just happened to like it and write a screenplay and make it into a movie that made it a cultural phenomenon, I think, just across the world. I think I've never met anybody who hasn't heard of it. I mean, in some capacity. And this movie did that. You know, nobody would have known about it. It would have just probably just fallen into obscurity like so many other things.
How much older was the book?
14 years?
14
so
years? Yeah,
not
I think you said,
older.
what, 1909 or something like that? Okay.
So, not a ton older, but to think that just a little movie that's, you know, struggled really hard to survive all this time has been able to do that is really something. Something else to note, too, is this movie was not filmed like, not even necessarily just like modern movies, but even movies of its time. So it's filmed in sequence. And so what that means is that he filmed it, I cannot remember his name, the name of the director. I am so sorry to people who are actual film buffs. He filmed it scene by scene in the way that it is written in the script, which I cannot imagine how difficult that was. Because the typical movie is going to be shot, well, here's all these scenes that are going to occur in the same room. We're going to fill those all at once. And then we're going to go to the next room or the next set, and we're going to film all of those all at once, and then they're going to get cut together. And, you know, it's it's kind of sad to think about that they filmed it in sequence when it's still not cut right.
Yeah,
most versions of it.
It's really bizarre.
Isn't
Also,
it?
that must have been a pain to, I mean, I'm assuming he must have had to, Lon Chaney or whatever must have had to do his makeup over and over again, too.
I know, especially under that mask. God, that would ruin everything you put on.
Seriously.
Ugh.
That must have been a mess to film that way. I don't know why they would have done it that way.
It's also ridiculous because they filmed this with 2 cameras. So that means that they're filming it like that in sequence twice. And they did a lot of movies at this time. Some Charlie Chaplin movies and other, like, Marx movies and Harold Lloyd movies with 2 cameras because one was going to be for an American audience, the other one was going to be put out for foreign audiences, so they could edit it with completely different title cards, and also just to have a second set of negatives if something happened to the originals, which was rampant then, because if you read about a lot of old movies and like lost films, why are there all these fires that have destroyed all of this film?
Yeah, it's really bizarre.
It's just always like, they were destroyed in the fire of 1901, the fire of 1903, the fire of 1905.
It's always a fire.
God forbid. Maybe they were horribly flammable. I don't know. But it was just, it's always, always, always a fire. And so they were always trying to
find a way.
Yeah, to kind of save their butts just in case. You never know.
Jeez.
And so the second camera that was used, not the main camera that exists for what was, and I guess is, depending who you ask, the original version, is called the Eastman House print. So the Eastman House is like a museum for photography, something of that nature. And this version that you're going to see, like, if you look up any of the ones on YouTube, if you buy a DVD, if you buy a Blu-ray, pretty much any VHS that's ever been made of this, they're going to be the Eastman House print, because somehow the quality of it is so much better that there is editing that has been done to these negatives as well, but it doesn't show that. Like, the film doesn't reflect that. Like,
Mhm.
people that are film historians, people who know negatives and actual physical film so well, especially after everything that, like, changed as film progressed and how it went from being actual physical medium to being digital,
Mhm.
just are honestly dumbfounded from what I understand, because there is no wear on these negatives that are the original negatives,
Mhm.
that it should, like, reflect that it was used over and over and over to make all these prints, and it just does not show that.
Hmm.
And the majority of home releases have used this version, and you can see that if you ever watch it side by side with maybe something on a Criterion or something on a Blu-ray,
Mhm.
they look very different. It completely skews, like, the actual view of the film.
So I'm assuming the Tubi version is not the Eastman House print then,
I
right?
think it's like a copy of a copy, because
Hmm.
it looks so bad you cannot read half the title cards on
Oh
it.
yeah, and whenever there's like letters on screen written from Eric or anything, there's no way to tell what they say.
No, like, if you haven't seen this movie before,
You're not gonna really know.
you'll have no idea what they say. This poor boy suffered.
Yeah, I struggled. If I wasn't watching this with somebody who's seen the movie multiple times, I don't think I would have known what happened.
They did one more thing with this movie that is really strange. Even for the time, is 5 years after its initial release, when this movie first came out, they made it a talking version in 1930, because by that time, obviously, talkie films were coming out, were all the rage, and people just didn't give a damn about anything that was a silent movie anymore. They're like, well, we can have sound, so why don't you just throw this away? I don't give a damn. I don't care. Full Karen. And when they brought it out, it made so much more money. I think probably way more than they had even ever could have dreamed it would, because it was so important. Like, people were so enraptured by the idea of getting to watch people and hear them at the same time.
It's like, what a concept.
I know. Here we are.
Shit.
All this time later, so much has changed. The thing is they did have to come back and reshoot a lot of the scenes of this, and a good portion of the people that were stars in this movie were able to come back and do their own talking parts. But people like Lon Chaney and a couple of others, if you were, at this time, you were basically owned by whatever studio was employing you then. If they said no, you can't borrow him, tough shit. So if you watch it, you'll hear, like, Christine and Raul talk, and they sound fantastic, whatever. And then there's title cards for the Phantom.
It's so bizarre. Like,
it's the strangest thing.
You wonder why they wouldn't just
bother.
pick somebody else to do the voiceover,
I know.
right?
I don't know if it was like a legality thing or what, but I guess in retrospect, maybe they could have just filmed a whole new movie.
Well,
but
it also helps because it's not like Lon Chaney looks like Lon Chaney in that movie.
I know, because
so they could have pretty
anybody
much
could have done
they
this
could have
voice.
picked anybody to do some sort of weird, creepy or mysterious voice. So it was a very odd choice. I feel like I would be annoyed watching that version.
Absolutely.
Like, I feel like it either just needs to be silent or all voice. I feel like a mix just. I haven't seen it, so I guess I can't really say, but I feel like it wouldn't work.
It's really strange. And, if anybody wants to comment, shoot us, a tweet or something, and let us know if you know why they didn't get to let anybody else do the voice. Anyone else. It's the most bizarre thing I've ever
You're so
seen.
upset about
I'm
it.
always going to be mad because it's ridiculous, because
No, it
she
definitely
sounds
is.
great. Raul sounds great. Everyone else, you get to hear them sing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing. And then it's just fucking silent. Just what? Are you? It's 1930. Get with the times. God.
Fair. Well, that being said, I guess we said that we wanted to rate movies. I don't really know how we'll do it. I guess we could just do what normal movie ratings: 1 out of 5 stars, 2 out of 5 stars, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I give this a solid 4, especially in context,
Yeah.
because it's not perfect. It's very rare for. I mean, nothing is perfect, but for a 5-star, quote unquote, to be given to anything, I think will be rare from anyone. But I feel like for its time, for what it is, it's pretty damn good, and it's 100% a must see. I think, especially if you're a horror fan. I'm definitely glad I watched this, especially someone that's new to the genre.
Yeah, I think It's always on those lists of 101 movies you should see before you die. And it earned its place there. I think if you love film, if you love the art of it, the people that are in movies, the people who make movies, the people who are behind the camera, it's astounding. Everything that they did to make this so beautiful. And, you know, as weird as these cuts are, and as shitty as the Tubi version may be, it's still a beautiful movie. The sets look great. You know, the acting from my OG fave, Lon Chaney, I will always love him, is fantastic. He doesn't have to, you know, say anything. I feel him, and I think it's absolutely, at very least, a 4 out of 5 stars.
There we go. Well, that was The Phantom of the Opera. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to our probably way too long dissection of it, because this has been going longer than I thought we would have. But I really enjoyed it. Next week, we are going to be doing Hellraiser, so that should be fun. I'm very excited for that. I love me some practical effects in movies, and I've been told that that movie has some of the best of all time. I've also been told that it's really cheesy and kind of dumb, which is also the kind of shit I like in all my kind of movies, so that's going to be a good time. But if you want to find us not on podcast form, we both have Twitters. I am at Craigley1234.
And I am at An Olympian Hero.
Yes, and the Twitter account that we have for this podcast is BM&F Podcast, I think.
That sounds
I honestly don't remember if it has podcast or not.
Fears. That's
but
right.
yes, if you
no,
look,
it has podcast.
Yes, but if you go to Blood Monsters and Fears on YouTube, on here, this is week 1, so we're still getting stuff set up and ready. We might not be on podcast services, but we're gonna get this on iTunes and Google Play and everything else as soon as we can. But definitely, no matter what, it's gonna be on YouTube. So starting off, we'll be there, and then we're gonna expand as much as we can from there. So thank you all for listening, and we'll speak again next week. Have a good one, guys.
Bye.